to our final speaker, which is Jane Finley, who is president of the Landscape Institute. I think it's time for an introduction than that, to be fair. Jane Finley.
Thanks, Chris. I'm not just the president of the Landscape Institute. I'm actually a landscape architect as well, and I'm a director of FIRE, which is a landscape practice based in Birmingham. So I'm Midlands based. It's really good to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. And it's great to be back in person. I had to make a real conscious effort this morning not to put my jeans and fluffy slippers on, otherwise I should have been sitting in front of a video camera or something. But I'm here today to talk about what does the future of green heritage look like. We've heard already this morning from some key people and organisations involved in shaping our green heritage, and you, the audience, are our experts because you're the ones who are involved in delivering heritage projects, parks and green space management every day. But my expertise is evidence-based design for healthy places, and as a landscape professional and president of the Landscape Institute, what I bring is my knowledge and understanding of why we need to be creating and managing our future heritage to tackle environmental and social challenges. And recognition that developing additional skills and increasing the number of landscape and parks professionals is absolutely a vital part of shaping our future green heritage. And no single part of the landscape profession, from planning to designing to managing our landscapes, can actually do this on our own. We have to work together to do this. So we also need to challenge perceptions and influence the decision makers. My aim today is to lay out some of the challenges and highlight the opportunity and give you some ideas to carry into the rest of today and beyond. So I want to go back to January 2020, and it does seem like a lifetime ago now. Every January I take a look at the World Economic Forum report. It's one that I always look at as their annual global risk report, as you can see here. And last year, 5 of the most likely and 3 of the 5 most impactful were assessed to be environmental risks. Fast forward to January this year, and regardless of the pandemic, 4 out of the 5 most likely risks are still environmental. Only infectious diseases replaces natural disasters. Likewise, this year, 3 of the 5 most impactful risks are still environmental risks, including climate action failure and biodiversity loss. Even in the midst of this global pandemic, we continue to fight on 2 fronts, tackling the climate and biodiversity emergencies. And last year at the LI, we opted to push on and launch our climate and biodiversity action plan despite COVID, recognising that we really have these crises to contend with. We all know that those who are most disadvantaged will be impacted the most by the effects of global warming and have been most affected by COVID-19. It's a fact, and we've heard it already this morning, 1 in 8 British households has no garden. Black people in England are nearly 4 times as likely as white people to have no outdoor space at home, so we must do better. And I feel that future developments must be designed with landscape at their heart, and our cities, most importantly, must be retrofitted with space for people and nature. Now, this diagram here demonstrates the tree canopy inequality and the effects of the urban heat island on Birmingham city centre and the neighbouring wards. And you can see here the hottest parts of the city are areas with very few trees and very poor quality open green space. These also happen to be the lowest income neighbourhoods with many social issues. In terms of the economy, it appears that we're heading to some sort of weird recession. We don't really know what is going to happen, but the government is looking to stimulate the economy, and in our view at the Institute, driving ahead with grey infrastructure and unsustainable projects is not the way forward. So rather than build back better, we see it as a must-have to build back greener. And the pandemic has also laid bare issues of inequality, underinvestment and, frankly, poor planning. These lessons we have learned from the pandemic can guide us to a better future and a green recovery with landscape, nature and people at its heart. The LI launched the Greener Recovery Policy Paper in autumn 2020, and in it we're calling for a major shift from grey to green development as part of the UK's COVID-19 recovery plan. So we're asking the UK government not to miss this once in a generation chance to invest for a truly green recovery. And of course there's also the park supplement to seize the opportunity to make parks and green spaces part of the nation's economic and social recovery, as well as addressing climate change and restoring nature. So to build back greener, we must work to expand the ambitions of the landscape profession. We must increase the power of the discipline to real effect change that's at a scale that's meaningful. That's why the Landscape Institute is challenging government to put the right policies in place to enable the solutions we've always known about for decades and even longer. So the 5 principles set here all apply to green investment and can be applied directly to parks and green spaces. This includes investment in retrofit and maintenance. That's the rebalancing infrastructure spend from capital to revenue to ensure places and spaces that can be greened, managed and maintained. And on the final point of this slide, a step change in digital skills and data. In May this year, the Green Alliance published this research against the backdrop of the green recovery. And the evidence is clear that green jobs should be at the heart of the government's Levelling Up programme. Those towns and smaller cities struggling most with unemployment before the pandemic will have the highest labour market risk as the economy opens up again. But analysis shows that these areas also have the highest potential for environmental improvements and therefore the greatest opportunity for green jobs growth. So there's a huge amount that employers, education and training providers, professional bodies like the LI and a range of sector organisations need to be thinking about when it comes to skills, bringing the next generation on board and including how this will be funded. Now, I know some of you have already been part of our Parks and Green Space network and have been involved in developing a professional development programme for parks and green space managers using a standards-based approach. This aligns skills, for example, the Natural England's emerging green infrastructure standards, the Green Flags Award quality standards, the LI's professional standards, and the 21st Century Parks Manager, known fondly as the Apsy Petals. So we're continuing to develop our standards partnership to ensure this work is relevant UK and sector-wide, and we're anticipating some key findings from the State of the UK Parks Survey in 2021 by APSI and CFP. So if you'd like to get involved, please get in touch via the email address up there. I think that these will be made available to you later, so you'll be able to take that off. So I would like to end this morning's session, well, we're now lunchtime, by sharing some ideas with you on what might be our green heritage of the future, to inspire, to influence and to engage the decision makers. 2 of the examples are from our climate change case studies publication. This is Landscape for 2030. The new case studies in this paper demonstrate the measures needed to create climate resilient, low carbon places at all scales, from public squares to eco parks. And our aim is to show stakeholders and government at all levels the critical and central role the landscape profession has to play in the delivery of climate change policy. Cater Park is one of those examples. It's in Kidbrooke Village in London, and it's a recent example of how the right kind of investment in parks and green spaces can lead to a fantastic array of positive outcomes. So it deals with climate, local community and nature. And as well as featuring in Landscape for 2030, this project also won the Landscape Institute Award last year for enhancing biodiversity, and it also received my President's Award. I was so impressed with every box that it ticked. The project was an ambitious HTA reshape of an 8 hectare park It returns nature to the city and challenges the perception that brownfield development can't contribute to the wider ecological and biodiversity network, but it also creates really successful spaces for the community, as you can see here, with some very great, really good examples of active play. Another fantastic example from our report is a park that's actually featured in our original 2008 climate change position statement, and it's been interesting to take a retrospective look at the impacts of the project on people, place and nature, and a great chance to showcase how landscape work can really deliver long-lasting and powerful impacts. Before, the Quaggy River lay hidden in an underground channel, so people didn't see it. It provided very little habitat for wildlife, and it was completely featureless. Sutcliffe Park was an assortment of playing fields, and after its redevelopment by the Environment Agency's landscape team, it was transformed into this fantastic high-quality natural environment. So they brought the river out of its concrete channels, created a natural meander, which is a fantastic habitat for aquatic flora and fauna. Instead of a flattened uniform stretch of monocultured grass, there are now rolling landscapes with a range of natural habitats, including lakes, ponds, flower meadows, reed beds, and a variety of nature and natural trees. And it also delivers brilliantly for people. The park was born out of a collaborative working, and this spirit of local engagement has remained strong with a very successful Friends of the Park group. This next example is from Denmark, Kokkedal, which is a brand new park that was built as part of the solution to mitigate the inevitable impacts of climate change. The project is in a suburb of Copenhagen, and it's primarily aimed at floodwater management for the city, but it also addresses issues of public health with new recreation areas, common areas, paths, creating a very stimulating environment to live, work and play. And there's been a huge increase in the amount of people walking, cycling and running through the wetlands. But it's not just about traditional parks. We need to be bold and imaginative in how we use and design all our urban green spaces to create green networks so that our roads become parkways and small local pocket parks are only a few minutes walk from home. And with this in mind, at the end of last year, the Landscape Institute held the Transforming the Urban Landscape competition, which was in direct response to the pandemic. And the brief for this competition was how our urban spaces would need to be adapted to incorporate measures needed to restrict the spread of COVID and other airborne diseases. But it also looked at how the design of our spaces could mitigate the effects of climate change and biodiversity loss. So we set a challenge. We were looking for reimagined urban spaces, and I have to say we weren't disappointed. We had over 160 entries from students and professionals from all over the world, and it covered, the cover here is from the Landscape Journal depicting the winning professional entry called Transforming the High Street, where every bit of the High Street had some green addition to it. Now, I can't talk about this competition without mentioning the runner-up, and the reason for that is one of my team at FIRA put this entry in. I have to say I was not part of the judging panel for this, so there's no special for them. So the canal park at Airwash, the judges said this scheme stood out for its diverse user-centric approach. But what is interesting is that 8 million people live nearby a canal, often in urban areas where space is limited, and canals have always been a really underused resource. But since the start of the pandemic, canal corridors become a vital escape for many people needing to mentally and physically recharge, particularly in the urban and peri-urban areas. So this entry by Joe from my office explored the idea of how we can enhance the canal corridor to address the rise in number and diversity of people looking to use our canals, but also to look at using it as a means of off-road travel. But it will be interesting to see how our towns and cities morph and respond to changes in transportation. There will be fantastic opportunities to refit grey infrastructure, greening up our towns and cities. And this entry for the competition received a sponsor's accolade for its vision to transform a multi-storey car park roof deck. These largely became redundant during the pandemic, but they could become redundant as we change our methods of transportation. This has been retrofitted into a series of eco-centric and sustainable rooftop parks, habitats and community green spaces. They've created a valuable pandemic and climate-resistant community asset that promotes social cohesion, health and well-being for a growing city centre population. And it's making a significant contribution to increasing biodiversity with rainwater harvesting and carbon positivity as well. This is the competition student winner who chose to an abandoned space in their hometown of Beijing. The area lacks green space, and during the pandemic and the very strict regulations they had over in China during the lockdown period, it was difficult to take part in any kind of social activities. And the judges on this entry said that the design centred on a rain garden considers the importance of nature in the city, issues of pollution and climate change, and educating people about nature whilst providing an oasis for people who live in high density areas. And for me, these examples demonstrate just how important that parks and green spaces of the future need to be multifunctional, and that is key to making these successful spaces. Burial grounds and cemeteries are also important green urban spaces, but are often forgotten, but can play a very important role in the local green space network. The Highgate Cemetery competition was launched in November by the LI to seek architects and landscape architects to develop this new 25-year master plan for the site to secure its future and ensure it remains historic and sustainable for a 21st century cemetery. The project will be led by landscape, and it needs to be in the context of climate change. This image from the competition is by the award-winning practice Gustafsson, Porter and Bowman, shows the sensitive master planning approach they took to conserve the iconic cemetery with its historic assets and with sensitive planting interventions to increase the biodiversity on site and to widen the range of ecological systems that could be supported. So let's go back to Birkenhead Park. And finally, let's also be reminded that in the context of COVID-19 that we can learn from how diseases and epidemics have shaped places throughout history, leading to significant change in planning and the development of important infrastructure. So we're at this Green Heritage event, so I don't need to tell you about the first public park in the world, Birkenhead Park. And I say that is because I'm from Birkenhead also. We know that improving the health of the local population at the time when cholera was rife in Liverpool was at the heart of the creation of this park, but also the many hundreds of parks that followed, and it's become a terrific legacy from the Victorians that we all still benefit from. And of course, it was also the inspiration for New York's Central Park, and it's such a beautiful green oasis in the middle of a vast city. And 160 years later, it's as relevant today as it was then. And we instinctively know that this is good for us. But what it demonstrates is how important it is to invest in our parks and green spaces today to create the green heritage of the future. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jane. Have we got one burning question before we go for lunch? If not, I'll ask very quickly. How do you think the LI can work more closely together with someone like the Midlands Parks Forum to actually help develop skills and improve standards?
Well, so we are already working with some of your guys on the competency framework, and I think we need to have much more cross-working together. I think it also starts at the regional level, so I would like to see Midlands Park Forum being part of the Landscape Institute Midlands branch, and let's get some synergy going on there. But we do have an award for in our award category for parks and park management, and it started off with quite a few entries last year, hardly any this year, and I'd really encourage you all to enter the awards, and you can showcase your awards on the national stage. We do get a lot of publicity through our awards. We had Sir David Attenborough at our last in-person event, so it gets a lot of notice, and we'd love you to be part of it, because I don't think we can do our job as landscape architects without having good park managers and green space experts as part of it. Really important.
Thank you. And thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you.